Thanks everybody for joining the intro class pre-work, pre-everything information, pre-work preview. There's too many pre's in that title. I always get tripped up by it. All right, let's go ahead and share screen and take a look at what your project's going to be for the intro to programming pre-work information. Let me get to the right portion here. There we go. Okay, hopefully this is coming through so folks can see it okay. Hopefully you don't have any grayed out spots too. I know sometimes when these widgets overlap, they can block some of the screen. So hopefully you're seeing everything okay. All right, so we dropped this link in the chat in case you have not gotten it or haven't looked at it yet. If you applied for the intro program, then you would have gotten this by email after submitting your application. So that way you can start previewing what the project is that you have to build as part of the application process. So the reason that we do this pre-work assignment, in case anybody's curious why you're having to do work before you're even in a class, is just to make sure that the format of our online program is something that's workable and manageable for you. It is very weird to do online learning. I myself had gotten an associate's degree in web design through an online program, and it was very unusual from being in an in-person class. So it gets, it gets a little getting used to. Through this pre-work assignment, you'll get to get an idea of how much work is involved from week to week with the class, and you'll kind of start to get familiar with, okay, I'm given a tutorial or I'm given some information I have to absorb, and then I have to demonstrate that by building some kind of code. So we have our pre-work assignment set up in that same way. You do not need to have any prior knowledge of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, anything like that to be able to do this pre-work assignment. You just have to have the time to be able to commit to it and the fortitude to be able to work through it. We did try and pick tutorials and information that are user-friendly regardless of whatever your level is that you're coming in at. So hopefully for those of you who do have JavaScript background, it's not going to be too boring for you. And for those of you who don't, then it'll be a good introduction to it. The first thing I always like to caveat, the items that you're working through in this pre-work assignment, this is not the only time you're going to be learning it. So part of this assignment is we have you work through a tutorial. Everything you learn in the tutorial, you'll be learning more in depth in the intro course directly. But we needed to have a way to be able to give you some starter information and let you play with code so you can see if the program's a format that you like and if it's even something that interests you, because some of you are brand new to coding and you might not have done much with it to see, is this something I like or is this something that will drive me crazy? So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Our very first page that you are taken to when you click the link we shared in the chat is that Open Intro Pre-Work page. It's going to have a very short 5-ish minute video that gives you a quick overview of the entire project. The project's broken up into the instructions information, a part 1, which is the tutorial part, a part 2 where you're doing some coding, and then the submission part where you're submitting what you build in part 2. So if you need a quick refresh, then this video here that you see on the page is going to be a quick, easy way to be able to remind yourself of everything that we talked about in this session here. But as I had mentioned, we'll also send the recording out to you as well. Okay, so part 1, the tutorial, estimate that it'll take you about 15-ish hours to be able to work through the tutorial. So take a look at your time over the next several weeks and break out little chunks of time when you can work on things. They do have the tutorial broken up into sort of chapters, I guess is what they call them. So you can always gauge your time that way to be like, okay, let me get through 1 or 2 chapters today or whatever you need to do. And then part 2 is the demonstrating. That could take about 5 to 10 hours, depending on how fancy you want to get with writing your code, how much you want to stretch the skills you learn in the tutorial. So feel free to, allot time for yourself as well too. And then submitting your link is the easiest and the shortest part. It takes maybe like 5 minutes to get everything together and submit. All 3 parts are going to take about 20 hours to complete. Plan your time accordingly. If you need to double check pre-work deadlines, you can go to the application process page, which is codethedream.org/apply-now, and it will reroute you so that way you can see what the deadlines are. As a reminder, do I have it on here? No, I didn't. Oh, here it is. Nope. Is it? Yeah, there it is. Okay. For fall trimester, pre-work needs to be submitted by August 11th. We did extend that date out a little bit, and then the results will be emailed August 27th, which is a couple weeks later than what they were initially planned to be. So if you got word that you'll know August 12th, no, August 11th is the new deadline, which pushes back when we can let you know that you're accepted, which would be August 27th is when you'll get results of your application process. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the tutorial part and take a look at what that looks like. There's a lot of information on this page. Go slow, refer to the screenshots as needed. We did try and break things out to make it easier to follow along, but it's just so much information that we're trying to share with you all. So hopefully it'll be mostly okay working through the process. So the tutorial part is through a completely unaffiliated organization called Khan Academy. They have online learning available in a variety of subjects, including computer basics and programming basics, but they also do like math and languages and all kinds of fun things. So if you're looking for a free option to learn, Khan Academy is a great site to check out regardless. There is a specific course in Khan Academy that you'll be learning. So the tutorial portion lets you know, sign up for Khan Academy. It's a free account to be able to sign up with. The purpose of signing up is so that it can kind of bookmark your progress through the tutorial that we provide you with. So you'll follow the links to be able to do your sign up. They might ask you if you're a learner, a teacher, or a parent, and just some basic sign up information. You can sign up either with an email account or you can sign up as a link through like your Google, Facebook, Apple accounts to whatever is easiest for you. And then you'll work your way through the tutorial. All right, so let's get a visual on this tutorial. When you get to Khan Academy, you'll know whether or not you're signed in because you'll have your name up here in the top right corner. So if you've got your name that you created or your email handle or whatever up here, then you know that you're signed in as you and it'll be recording your progress through the unit. One thing I want to highlight especially is, sorry, let me close this because it's going to make it a little hard to see everything. There we go. There are lots of units here. You don't go through all of these units. You only go through unit 1. That's one question that we've gotten from a lot of applicants, and they're like, I couldn't make it through all of it. You don't have to go through all of it, just unit 1. That doesn't mean that unit 1 doesn't have a fair amount of information. So unit 1 has a section about intro to programming that gives you sort of an overview of how to use the site and what is programming. And then they talk about drawing basics, coloring, variables, animation basics, interactive programs. They have a little spiel about becoming a community coder, how to connect with other people using Khan Academy, resizing variables, working with text and strings, functions, logic and if statements, debugging, looping. So they cover a lot. As you can see, Unit 1 has a lot of information in it. Each one of these little icons with a title is a link. And so that's how you'll get into the different items. And when you go into them, it'll either be a video that you watch, or it might be just something that you read along with like a screen demonstration showing you something that's happening. In other sections of that unit 1, then there might be coding challenges. You can jump back to that overview we were just looking at by clicking unit 1, and it takes you back to here. And as you can see, it's already showed this is the progress I've made through this item. So it'll show you the progress that you're making through the different pieces of the lessons as you go through unit 1. The challenges will be where you write actual code and test it. So you can go ahead and start writing your code in here. It'll let you know if there's some kind of issue. You can start over, all of those good things. When you're in a particular lesson, then it will tell you the lesson number. So right now we're in lesson 2, drawing basics, and it'll show you all of the bits and pieces that are within that section. So making drawings with code, quick tip on number scrubbing, that challenge of building a simple snowman, those kinds of things. And it shows you whether or not you've completed them there as well. So that gets you comfortable with the interface of what you're using, the Khan Academy site for what to use and how to use it. Unit 1 takes you back and it shows you your progress through things. For those of you that have background in HTML, CSS, or in JavaScript, and some of this is already familiar to you, you are allowed to jump over sections that you're like, oh yeah, I already know everything there is to know about functions, or, I feel completely comfortable with how to handle text and strings in JavaScript. So if there's a section that you're like, I feel good on this, I'm okay, you can skip it. We don't see your progress. When you're logged in and you're seeing this progress, only you can see that information. Khan Academy does not send us any information about your progress through it, whether or not you've done all of them, whether or not you've skipped a few of them, whether or not you've done some multiple times. All of that's just your own personal information to prepare you for the project that you'll build for us. So hopefully that helps with Khan Academy a little bit. I want to pause briefly and see if there were any questions about that specifically that I need to address before moving on. Let me double check our chat too in case there's anything I'm missing. Okay, looking good so far. Okay, so once you've gotten what you need out of Khan Academy, whether that's working through all of these little tidbits of coding challenges and informational videos and watching them build code videos and things of that nature, then you'll want to proceed on to part 2. So here we are back on the instructions page. We're just showing you screenshots of like how to be able to see the lessons within. They did change their user interface a little bit since these screenshots, but the concept is still similar as far as being able to use this panel on the left to jump back to the main unit 1. The icons will show you what's going on as far as if it's a video, reading, a coding challenge, a project, practice work, that kind of a thing. And it'll show you which section you're in, and then the content of that section of the lesson is there. So feel free to lean on those videos and or screenshots to be able to help work your way through the tutorial. And then once you have completed the tutorial, then you'll proceed to the demonstration part of the project. So part 2 is the demonstration portion. You will have learned about variables, conditionals, loops, and functions as you work through that Khan Academy tutorial. And those are the 4 things that we require you to build in your code that you submit to us for evaluation as part of the application process. So the coding demonstration part happens in a different program. Khan Academy is just the tutorial, and then P5JS is a library that was built so that people can use shortcuts to be able to create shapes, drawings, animations using JavaScript programming language. So let me jump to the P5JS editor. Let's see here. Hold on. Here we go. All right. So Khan Academy, we saw, has the lessons and the sections to do. P5 is just code, which will probably feel a little daunting at first when you've just finished a tutorial and now you're having to write code, but bear with us. You do have instructions in your instruction section to kind of help you work your way through. The code that you build must have these 4 things, and pretty much anybody that meets those 4 things gets accepted to class. So it's really especially important that these 4 things are met within the code that you build. And Khan Academy teaches you what each of those things are. So be sure to toggle back and forth between your Khan Academy tutorial and your P5JS code builder to be able to get the practice and kind of get familiar with creating your code. Okay, so the drawing library has built-ins, like I had mentioned. So for example, if we're wanting to draw a circle that's red, then we would do fill with red. And let's do an ellipse. And we give it what are called parameters. So it's information that it needs to know about what kind of ellipse am I drawing. So we're going to start 100 pixels in, 100 pixels over, and we want this to be a 50 by 50 circle. All right, and then you'll see a little black dot here by the Sketch.js title. If you have not saved your work, I am not logged in, so it's gonna give me an error when I try and save it. So file, oops, not examples, sorry, file save, or Command S or Control S, and it'll say you need to be logged in. So be sure that you either logged in or signed up. I think I have it through my work email. Let me just jump into that really quick. There we go. Okay. So if you weren't logged in and you go to log in, it should still save the code that you had there. Now I can see I am logged in here, and it has not been saved yet. Now that I'm logged in, I can go ahead and save. And then we want to take a look and see, okay, did this work? So we hit the play button, and now we see it's a gray background. That's what this 220 number is. It's giving us the gray color. And then we have a red circle that's 50 by 50 filled in. That's 100 pixels down, 100 pixels over. So you'll write all of your code here in the function draw section, or you can also write it as its own unique function, which is one of the requirements, like so. And then let's just copy and paste our code from here to here. But then you need to reference the code here within the draw in order for it to show you what you've drawn there. So our circle shows back up once I say, hey, all of the code I wrote in my function, it needs to happen in draw. So if something's not in draw, you're probably not going to see it show up on your picture. And you want to test and make sure that everything that you've written code-wise is showing up the way you would expect it to. You can turn off the auto refresh if that's distracting. I also recommend turning off the auto refresh because when you start working with loops, if you have a broken loop or you don't write your loop the correct way, it can happen that you get what's called an infinite loop, where the code keeps trying to run and trying to run and trying to run, but it's not stopping running your loop over and over and over and over again. So it's getting hung up on that line of code. So turn off your auto refresh. Use play to be able to check to see what your work is. Make sure that your item is saved, no little black dot after the sketch.js, or you can also just do, file and save, so on and so forth. Okay, so the things that you need within your file are the variable, the function, that's a unique function that you've written. Obviously, there are two functions here, setup and draw. Those are the default ones. Those need to stay in there in order for this to work. If you were to overwrite the code and you take out setup, and you think, oh, okay, this should work by itself, right? When you take out the default code that they start you with and save it and run it, then you wind up running into some issues. Things don't show up the way that you would expect it to. If you take out all of the code and just have the code that you think is going to do your shape and you try and run it, that nothing shows up. So it's really, really important that that starter code that that you get to begin with is in there. So it has to have the setup, it has to have the draw in order for your code to run. And you have to save it and you have to run it to make sure it's doing what you expect it to. So those are the biggest things. There is a question as far as, can you build the code on some other platform, on some other development environment, and then copy and paste your content in here? Yes, you definitely can. You also can take projects that you've built from Khan Academy. So for example, the project Build a House, I think they give you some starter code. Yeah. So you can copy and paste your Khan Academy code in. Just make sure that you're doing it with the proper syntax, that you have your closing bracket and that you have your code in there. But you do need to be sure that whatever you're copying and pasting still meets the requirements. So this is that house project from Khan Academy, but I don't have any variables here. I don't have a unique function. I don't have a conditional saying do this under these circumstances, do that under the other situation. I don't have a loop saying do this X number of times. And those four things are required to be in your code in order for your work to pass and for you to be accepted into class. So you will need to update your code or make some changes, make some tweaks to make sure that this is meeting those four requirements of variable, loop, conditional, and function. All right, I think that hits the highlights as far as using the tutorial and using your P5JS editor. When you go to submit, we'll be back here on these instructions. We'll be on the submission page here. And you'll want to just double check everything. So make sure your code has all of the following: the variable, the conditional, the unique function. So if I'm looking at my code before I submit and it's looking like this, nope, I'm missing a lot. So I need to still keep doing some work and save my work and test my work before turning it in. And then you'll want to be sure that you're copying the proper link. So we have an example link here of what it would look like. Here in the P5JS editor, my link is editor.p5js.org, my username, sketches, and then some information. So that should look similar. Yep, P5JS, username, sketches, and some letters or numbers that just identify the code that you wrote, that little sample code that you wrote. And so we'll copy and paste that directly into the form here, paste the pre-work here. So we'll paste it here, fill out your name, your email address, and then the honor statement, you'll want to read and check all that apply. So you should be submitting something that's just your work. So you haven't copied from somebody else. You haven't plagiarized off of the internet. You wrote your code, you built it. Obviously, in the case of this house with Khan Academy, they give you a little bit of starter code, but you should be making this unique. This should be making this your own using what you've learned in the tutorials. So then it becomes your own code by doing that. Um, no plagiarizing, no copying someone else's work, and no using artificial intelligence to build your code for you. We do encourage you to use artificial intelligence to help with the learning process. So if you're like, I don't remember what they were saying about a for loop, can they explain that to me? You're welcome to use ChatGPT to ask them, like, explain to me more what a JavaScript for loop is. How does that work? And you should get some good, helpful information to kind of guide your learning process. But AI writing your code for you is not allowed. We will be able to tell if something has come up that looks pretty obviously AI written. So, that takes care of the submission process. You fill those in, click the blue submit button, and you're done. You should get an email confirmation that your work was submitted at the end there, and then you'll be good to go. There have been a couple of questions that popped up in the chat that I'd like to address. We talked about building your code elsewhere and then copying and pasting in here. Yes, that's totally fine. And then could you do something as simple as putting the code in a function and then place the function in the variable and call it? Yeah, you can have the function here like we were showing earlier. Function, my function. Oh, I can't even type today. Here we go. And then have all of the code that's actually building stuff within here and then call your function in here and it'll still show what you want it to show. This does count as your function, but we're still missing our for loop and our conditional and our variables. So you'll want to make sure that you're meeting those requirements as well. But yes, you can structure it that way. Awesome. Other questions out there that we haven't addressed? I want to make sure that you all feel comfortable with the project that you're diving into, that you feel clear as far as tutorial versus writing your code and what to submit.
I have
Um,
a quick question.
yeah, absolutely. Go ahead,
Hi,
Rory.
this is Rory in San Francisco. Do we have any opportunities, any tutors or TAs available? I understand that we are going to be doing, some isolated learning. However, I'm a tactile learner, and it helps me, work through things with human beings. I understand that it's not going to be, in a workspace, but still just knowing that there is an option to, talk through something with. What really helps me at this point is being able to articulate in speech what I'm actually doing, because it is difficult to translate, the way that I speak and think, versus the what I'm reading and writing on the page.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you're alone there either, Rory. Ashley, do we have any kind of like office hours or anything on the horizon prior to the pre-work deadline? I'm not sure if you have any of that planned.
Yes, so we do have two office hours planned so far. That will be, let me look at my calendar.
And sorry, I'm a little mush mouth. It's early in the Pacific. Those are going to be Central or Eastern times, most
Um,
likely, or
yeah, it's going to be in Eastern time.
okay,
There's sessions scheduled on Thursday the 25th and then Friday the 26th. I might schedule some more in between as well too.
sure.
For times, I'll have to look at that. But in the email I send after like sending the recording and I'll send that information along with it with what times and then the registration
Got
links as well.
Do you think we'll be using Slack perhaps to communicate, or
So for those office hours, they will be live. So you'll just hop on and ask any question
okay?
that you do.
And there will be another, like, watching other people solve problems and thinking about things in different ways, is a really beneficial to comprehension at this point. So I might have like A and B, but other people can have C, D, X, and that fills in all the holes in my head. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Also, Rory, you had mentioned before we had started recording about a connection with a partner organization. There are a number of organizations
Yeah,
that you work with. You're welcome to reach out to any partner organizations you're connected with, and ask if they have any resources to help you out through that process too. The code you write
yeah.
still has to be your
I'm in a
own, but you
parallel.
can lean on anybody for help.
I'm in a parallel data analytic and intro to data analytics. So I just want to make it's a lot of office hours to keep track of
Perfect. Awesome.
and different time zones.
Great. other questions out there that we haven't answered that we can address for folks? One thing I did want to mention, we've had applicants in the past. Everybody's a student to me since I'm class coordinator. Everybody's an applicant to Ashley. Um, applicants in the past have um, submitted code. Where was I going with this? Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. Um, oh my goodness, it's completely out of my brain. I'm sorry, y'all. Submitted code that so the conditional statement that you have to do, it does your code one way if one case is true. It does your code a different way if the case is false, for example. And we've had some folks that have had things in their drawing or their animation render based on like the time. So their drawing or their animation is different depending on what time of day you're looking at it. And so I just want to caution you all that if you are going to do anything like that, please make a note of it in your code at the top. You can make a comment in your code by using 2 backslashes like that and say, here is a comment, and it should be gray like that. So anything that you need or want us to know about your code, you can put in a comment at the top. So that way we're aware of it when we're taking a look at your project and considering it, everybody in the application process. So you can say, here's a comment. If you look at this in the evening, the picture is different. And that way we're aware that it may look different depending on what time of day we're looking at it. Or if you just want to give an example of what we should be seeing, like this is a house with a brown door, then that's helpful too. You're welcome to include comments in your code. All right. Other questions out there?
I don't know if you answered this one. Someone said, I'm not sure if I signed up for the summer or fall semester. Does that matter? Email me at admissions@codethedream.org and I'll check your application to see which one you signed up for. And then I don't know if you could have signed up for summer, but yeah, just email me. I'll look at it and then let you know.
And or if there are any changes to your application that we need to be aware of, you can always email Ashley at the admissions@codethedream.org to let us know if maybe you do have to push it from fall to spring because life just got crazy for you, or you're doing the intro pre-work and you're like, I actually might be able to try and tackle the advanced. Let me see if I can. Just be sure to email so that way we know what's going on and can help you accordingly. All right. There's a reminder of the deadline. So as Ashley had mentioned, pre-work deadline has been pushed out to August 11th. That of course also pushes out when you'll get your results. So that's been pushed out to August 27th. So we have a couple of weeks to be able to review the awesome stuff that you're going to build and send in. And then get your information out to you on August 27th for whether or not you've been accepted. We absolutely hate ghosts as far as people just not getting information they need. So regardless of whether you're accepted or not, expect an email from us on that August 27th date to let you know, yes, you're accepted. Here are the class details, or we can't accept you at this time, but here's some great things that you can do on your own to get yourself ready so you can reapply and join us the following trimester. We're very much about multiple opportunities. It's not a one and done. If you don't make it into class on a given application, it doesn't mean you're never going to make it into our class. It just means that you need a little extra love and support before you're ready to take on the challenging classes that we offer in our program. All right. Any other questions? Yes, you can definitely reapply. Absolutely. And even once you're in the program, we have opportunities like that as well too. We know that you all are dealing with a lot coming from some challenging backgrounds in some instances. So we try and be as flexible as possible to be able to help meet you where you are and let you continue to progress. So I myself, when I was a student, I ran into a situation of having to be a caregiver for a sick family member. And I had to just put classes on pause and I was able to push it to the next trimester and things worked out. And we definitely honor that as much as we can within the program as well too. We know life happens for everybody and it never seems to slow down for anybody. So we like to try and help you out as best we can.
I'm not sure if you answered this, Mary Alice. It says at the end of the session, will you guide us to apply for the advanced pre-work to continue with the process?
Sure. I think that means like if you're not sure if you would do intro or if you would do the advanced pre-work, you'd like a quick peek at what the advanced pre-work looks like. I can definitely do that. And or Ashley can email you the recording of the advanced preview as well too. But if you complete intro pre-work and you're like, wow, this was easy, let me try and tackle the advanced, assuming you have enough time before the deadline to be able to do that, then email Ashley, let her know that you're going to try for advanced and proceed with the pre-work that way. To be able to get to that, hold on, let me just jump to the right. Of course, I'm screen sharing, so it's going to take forever for my browser to behave itself. I know. Okay. Oops, pre-work. Okay. So jumping to the advanced class pre-work, similar kind of setup where you've got different sections or different parts of the pre-work that you work through. Part one for advanced is going to be plan and research. So the project for advanced pre-work application, if you are trying to test out of intro, so you start at the advanced level classes that we offer, then you'll use one of these open APIs to be able to create an API call to access the data that they share publicly through their open API. And you'll build out a project that has a minimum of an HTML page, a CSS document, a JavaScript file, and a README that shows how to run that site on a public GitHub repository. And you'll use the Open API to build a site that hits two data models. So for example, if we're doing the Star Wars API, then you would share information about films and about characters or about planets and vehicles or whatever you want to do. But it has to be two different points that you wind up hitting. And you create the site yourself. It can be vanilla JavaScript. It can be built out of something fancier if you're already familiar with other frameworks or tech stacks. We've had some applicants build things in React or build things in Node. That's totally fine. We do have resources available to you for GitHub documentation, JavaScript or API fetch, API documentation for those resources that you have to use to build your project off of. And then you build and test your project. So build your code out, making sure that you're meeting the requirements, test your site, make sure that it's working, double check your work. Those are all of the requirements as far as structure, content, and functionality. And then you use the same form to submit. You'll just wind up submitting the link to your repository instead of the link to a drawing, and your link to your repository would look like such. It was kind of a quick and dirty overview, Henry. I hope that helped you a little bit, or anybody else that's on the call that was kind of not sure intro or advanced what you're going to do. So hopefully that is helpful information for you. All right. I think we've hit all the highlights then, unless there's anything else that's a burning question that people haven't had answered.
I guess I like if we get into the intro to programming class, right? How would it work for like the next semester? Would we take one of the more advanced things, or how does that work exactly?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we have any terribly good infographics that kind of show you the progress through the program. We do cover it in student orientation for you too, though. After you complete the intro class, yes, you can take any of the advanced classes we offer. Starting in spring of 2025, we'll be offering a class in Python, a class in Ruby on Rails, a class in React, or a class in Node. Typically, we encourage students to only take one advanced class at a time. The advanced classes will be 15 weeks long, and then you'll have a 10-week practicum afterwards. A practicum is when you work with other students within the class on a group project to be able to build a project start to finish and really get comfortable with everything that you learned within the advanced class. Once people graduate out of intro, their program path can look very different depending on what their personal goals are. We've had some students that were unemployed for an extended period of time, so they elected to take two advanced classes at a time and then do a practicum following that. We've had students that just take advanced class practicum, advanced class practicum. We've had students that have taken React and then Node, then do a practicum. So it can look different for different people. We've had some students take one class, the practicum, get into the apprenticeship program that we offer through our labs side of our organization, and then come back to take additional advanced classes after they've gotten settled in as an apprentice and are working on a project for our labs side of our organization. So it can really look different, and you'll have opportunities throughout the program to be able to either talk to me or talk to your cohort leader about, this is what I'd like to do, this is my goals, is this a good direction for me, that kind of a thing. So that way you can kind of gauge where to go from there. Starting in 2025, we will be trimester based and all classes will be 15 weeks. So it'll wind up being, let me pull up my calendar. I'll stop sharing for a second and pull up my calendar so I can kind of give you an idea of what the breakdown will be for those. So 2025, February, March is when that spring trimester starts, and it wraps up around end of May, middle of June. The summer trimester in 2025 is going to be from July to October. And then the fall, winter 25-26 trimester will start in November and will go until, excuse me, end of February of 2026. So it gives you kind of an idea as far as how that goes. Typically, you have anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks gap between when your intro class ends or when your advanced class ends and another one begins. So you do have a little bit of breathing room between courses. But we didn't want to put too much in there so that, one, you wouldn't forget everything you learned, and two, so that it keeps you on pace and you're not waiting a year and a half to complete a course that'll get you to an entry level kind of position status.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Diana. Other questions out there? Anything else I can help with? All right. Well, thanks everybody. You'll probably have questions that come to mind. As Ashley has mentioned, feel free to email admissions@codethedream.org if you think of things that haven't been answered or that are questions that didn't come to mind until you're in the thick of things. So feel free to reach out to us if you need anything, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.